Well, thanks very much. I mean, Richard, obviously has been supporting Peace One Day, and he's a real sort of mentor, and I've learned so much from him, and he's become a friend. And I must start by saying, thanks, Richard, for everything, and thank you to Innocent, because the reason why we're here today is because people like Innocent Drinks have supported our journey and given us the fuel in the tank to do the things that we're doing. And I'm going to tell you really quickly, and I'm going to speak really fast. I've got exactly 10 minutes, and I'm going to stick to it. So I'll just tell you the story, and the story began because I was concerned and frightened and confused by what was going on in the world. I didn't understand what was going on at home. I didn't understand what was going on in school or in the community and in the wider world, and I was freaked out, and I just didn't know. And I've got no qualifications, and the only thing I know was a film camera, so I thought, okay, well, I'll use the film camera to try and make a difference in some way. And that made me think, okay, well, I'll make a film about peace, and I'll ask some men and women who are wiser and older and, how they've made sense of life, and then that would help me to understand why things are the way that they are. And then, because I'm a filmmaker, I could then show that film, and then maybe others would go, oh, yeah, that helps me make sense of it. But then I realized when I was thinking about that a film was a series of sound bites wasn't enough. It wasn't enough just to hear a series of sound bites. It had to have a structure. I'd been an actor, so I knew a little bit about that stuff. And so I was thinking about, well, where's the starting point for peace? Where's the starting point for global unity? Where's the starting point for intercultural cooperation, which the academics are saying is the key to humanity's survival? When's it all going to begin for us, separate from politics and religion, where we stand together as one in the name of peace and sustainability? And it fascinated me that day didn't exist. And that was suddenly when I had the idea. I thought, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a film about trying to establish the first ever day of ceasefire and non-violence with a fixed calendar date voted by every government of the world, every member state of the United Nations. And I went on that journey. And the two things that I've learned is failing is everything. I'll get the learning bit out of the way because it's what I've learned. Failing is everything. It's most interesting, I think. And secondly, that no's are much more interesting than yeses. And those are the two things that I think I operate with on a daily basis. No's are really interesting. Anyways, so I decided to go on that journey, and I built a case and went on the road and spoke to lots of different people until eventually, having traveled the world, and by the way, we had nothing, so BA would give me all our flights, and they still do, and Kodak gave this stock, and Panavision gave the cameras. Everybody gave everything. I was in my mum's back room. It was a beautiful process of all kinds of people doing wonderful things. And after a while, after a couple of years of work of making this movie, eventually the British government and the Costa Rican government put that idea forward to the United Nations General Assembly to establish a day of ceasefire and non-violence with a fixed calendar date, and it was unanimously adopted by the world, and the 21st of September is our day of peace. And for me, that was phase one. Phase two, and there are three, and this presentation is the third. The second phase was that as soon as I'd done it, I thought I'd made my film, I was out, that was it. I was kind of like, I'll move on to other things. That was many years ago. It's now 13 years, and I can see there are many, many years ahead for me to continue. But when I finished the film and we were showing it at festivals, I could hear the cynics saying, it's just a day of peace, it's meaningless, it won't work. And that was really sad. I was really genuinely totally confused that we created this day of peace, that I knew that the people who knew what they were talking about said that this was the right thing and that lives could be saved as a consequence of this day, but that actually people didn't believe in it. And I knew at that point we had to continue. And I knew that the only way to prove the cynic wrong, and for me cynicism kills, and cynics shouldn't feel bad, that's just how it is. We're a product of what we are. We shouldn't feel bad about feeling negative about things. It's just where we are. But we've got to make sure that the children of the next generations don't feel that way, because cynicism stops us from trying, obviously. And I think we have to believe in peace, and we have to try, and we have to make it a reality. So I decided that I would try and make it work, and the one place they said it couldn't work was Afghanistan, and Richard told the story. We went there, and after years of work, of course, the head of the Mujahideen wrote and said, we won't kill or kidnap on that day. That allowed UNICEF and WHO to take 10,000 vaccinators into areas that you couldn't normally go, and they vaccinated the 1.4 million children. Now, I'm telling that in a quick period of time, and you can learn more about that with the Day After Peace or going to peaceoneday.org and checking it out. But I knew at that point, when it had worked in Afghanistan, I knew that that was the end of phase two, and there was only one more phase left. And that was to institutionalize the day, because then from then on, the cynic didn't really have anything to say. And whether it was funding we were required, or whether it was people to become involved, or a teacher to talk about it in the classroom, I knew at that point we could do it. And this is the final part of this presentation, and that is that this is what I do every day. So the job now, having created a day of peace, and having proved categorically that it can work, we have to institutionalize it. We have to make it self-sustaining. The day needs to belong to everybody. Mother's Day in 1908, Mrs. Jarvis had the idea. Now I give my mum flowers, but we don't talk about Mrs. Jarvis. The same is going to be true of Peace Day. It will be completely irrelevant, the role that I've played, and if it isn't, then we've got it wrong. So that's the process that we're involved in, and that's why you're seeing incredible numbers. And I'll talk to you about the numbers that now McKinsey and company are measuring very carefully, and indeed funding. So, the institutionalization of the day, McKinsey's reckon 3 billion people will be aware of the day by 2016. 3 billion people. And the conversations that I've had with leading statisticians, at that point, it will be close to the institutionalization. It will become self-sustaining around this period. This is actually the letter from the Taliban. And this was the press release that came out from the UN saying that there was a 70% decrease in violence on that day. That was the UN putting out that information, not us. So there was just amazing to see those. So the properties that help you blast the information out and get people involved, and really this life-saving and education are the most interesting, are football campaigns, dance campaigns, DJ campaigns, all of these things are ways of engaging lots of people. But this is the box, and this is where a whole series of coalitions exist. So in 2010, for example, so there are 5 coalitions. There's an NGO coalition, a domestic violence coalition, a student coalition, a corporate coalition, a faith coalition, and we're just about to launch a media coalition. And those coalitions are run by others. Because what I didn't want to do was stand up on the stage and go, hey, how clever we are that we've got all of these people involved. And it looks like we're the ones who are trying to manifest all this activity. Much better for me to say to, for example, with an NGO coalition, Interpeace, one of the biggest peace organizations in the world, you run this coalition and let's get other NGOs to become involved. And the numbers just went crazy because it was no longer about Peace One Day, it was about everyone. For example, there were 28 international NGOs involved in 2010. There are over 700 international NGOs operating on the day this year. Now, the same was true of all of the other coalitions. So it's amazing that the big sectors of society, you can communicate out with leading figures within that society and get them involved in the day. And that's how you're seeing these incredible numbers. Education resources in the 6 official languages of the UN, it's presently being used in 197 different countries. Art, I could tell you lots about it. It's interesting. It's all curated by Jake Chapman and many other wonderful artists. Social media, the annual celebration, and film. And those things drive and inspire people to become involved. Lots and lots of people. This is the concert that Elton John did last year where we celebrated the 280 million people. So this is McKinsey's becoming involved with us. So Dominic Barton, the CEO, if you look very soon, you'll see all of his statements about what we've been doing. But this is in 2010, going to 2011 to 2012, and then up to 2013. And here are the really interesting numbers. So the numbers that are absolutely fascinating is in 2012, 280 million people were aware of the day in 2012. That's 4% of the world's population. 280 million people were less violent. That's 5.6 million people in and around Peace Day last year not involved in violence. That's obviously mind-blowing because already we said that we would get to 600 million people in 2013. We can already see that we've well exceeded that number of getting to 600 million people this year, which is 10% of the world's population. But what becomes really amazing, because we're looking at the metrics and looking at the call to action and looking at the intentions and looking at the way in which we're communicating and measuring, the 2% goes to 4%, meaning that close to, because it's over 600 million people, 30 million people won't be involved in violence in 8 weeks' time. I mean, that is like, you can imagine the drive and the passion and the excitement that you get every day from thinking, well, I'll talk to somebody in a minute who's the head of a media company. He's going to tell 5 million people, and the 4% of those 5 million people, that's a lot of people who won't be hit. And so that's incredible. And that's behavioral change. And that behavioral change, just because you may be wondering, well, how do you measure that? You just got one quick example is in a school. So we know that when a school utilizes the Day of Peace and young people, through their art and their poetry and their literature and their sport, are getting well engaged and getting excited about the day, they're changing their behavior because they're thinking differently about their relationships. And therefore, when it gets to the Day of Peace, the teacher rings us up and goes, there's no bullying in the school. But that's it. I mean, and you just have to look across all other sectors of where that can be true in the workplace and in the churches, or with our faiths, or wherever it may be. So this is, this is very interesting, and there'll be a wonderful report coming out at the end of the year. So, this year we're doing a 24-hour broadcast, the first ever time it's happened on YouTube, to celebrate those 600 million people. We're live from about 17 countries, including Iraq and Afghanistan and Colombia and London and Shanghai and just all over the world. It's a very fascinating fascinating show that we're putting on with incredible artists and DJs and celebrities. This is the Peace Palace where we got the Peace Prize. It's 100 years old, and they asked us to produce the 100-year celebration of the Peace Palace on Peace Day, which we'll do. But that forms, and then we do a show out of Colombia and Medellin to end the 24 hours, and then we're putting a new documentary on those 24 hours. And these are all the live moments from all over the world. So what we wanted to do in the 24 hours that peace is happening is we want you to know about it, hear about it, learn about it, because I'm seeing media that is confusing me and concerning me and slightly frightening me. And we, on that 24 hours, want to show you another window to the world, which is full of inspiration and amazing people doing phenomenal things. And it's all set up and it's ready to go. And then we went to the actors to say, look, you actors are amazing and lots of people follow you. And why don't you choose the pieces of text that you love that are about humanity's survival and read them, and we'll play them through. And then we did the same with music. And then this is how we fund it with the corporations and, you know, Innocent putting it on the bottle and Coke putting it on the can. And, you know, this is the fuel, you know, that allows all of this to operate. I've definitely got to the end of my 10 minutes. Thank you very much for letting me talk. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks.